What's up, everybody? It's Gavin here with NBA Real Talk. Just want to talk about my Raptors. They've won 3 games in a row. I think they're back, not quite back to form, but back in action. And yeah, let's just talk about where we can expect them to end up by the end of the year. So, I was saying long before this that I do believe they'll make the playoffs. I do think we're going to be a later seed this year in the playoffs, simply based on the fact of how we started. I think even if we get back to normal, I think it's just tough climbing out of a hole like this. But in the Eastern Conference, as long as you're around 500, plus 10 teams are going to make the playoffs this year, we should have a shot, and I'm sure we can get back there. But I'd say there's 3 things that we need to address in order to have basically a successful season this year. The first thing on that list is going to be trade Kyle Lowry. Now, Kyle Lowry's value is pretty much as high as it's ever been. He's playing some of the best basketball of his career. I believe I believe it would still be true this year if it was true last year. He's basically in a category with LeBron James as being the only players over 33 or 34 years old averaging the kind of numbers they do. Obviously, LeBron averages, far greater numbers, but I mean, that's a pretty elite class to be in no matter how you cut it. So what they need to do is trade Kyle Lowry, because unless we do some kind of quick rebuild on the fly here and become a reasonable competitor in the Eastern Conference, we're probably a first or second round out this year. And unless we know we're going to re-sign Kyle next year, which I'm not averse to, we should really trade him, because best case scenario, we trade him, get some assets, back for this year, and then he can re-sign with us next year if that was really something he wanted to do. He's obviously he's in the twilight of his career, even if it's an extended twilight, because I don't think he's retiring or slowing down anytime soon. But he's clearly at the back end of his career. He probably wants to compete for championships. And if he's happy to re-sign with us, I think we should hold on to him. But at the same time, it makes perfect sense to trade him, get some assets, let Freddie take those reins, maybe get Norman Powell in the starting lineup anyway, switch things up a little, because right now where we're sitting at, it just doesn't make much sense to hold on to him unless A, we're really trying to push it deep in the playoffs, or B, we plan on re-signing him next year. Bottom line is, there's a bunch of teams out there in the Eastern and Western Conference that could totally utilize his services, would totally be looking for him somewhere around trade deadline, especially to really shore up their playoff runs. So we need to get on that. We need to trade Kyle Lowry, get something for him, because last but not least, the reason we need to do that is we've had Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol. That's 4 of our champions from that 2019 team. That's 4 starting caliber player, doing the Vulcan sign. 4 starting caliber players that have walked from our team in 2 years. We cannot afford to have a 5th one in Kyle Lowry. So we need to do something about that, whatever it is. We need to either sign him now, if that's what we kind of plan to do, which I don't think we really plan to do, or we need to trade him. I think that much is obvious. Let's move on to the next point. The next thing the Raptors need to do, fairly obvious one, is they need to address the front line. They need to basically address the center position. Honestly, I have faith that Baines will come around. I don't think he's played utterly horrible in the games he's played. He just hasn't played good. And the thing is, he's in kind of an unfair position, because the Raptors, by losing Serge and losing Marc, you can't really replace those guys. Baines is in a really tough position where he's been like a bench guy. He started a bit for Phoenix last year, got good results, and we need him to go in there and take over for one of the greatest defensive big men in the last however many years, and one of the best sort of sixth man off the bench in Serge Ibaka, shot blocker, shot maker. We're asking Baines to come in and just act like, let's keep things going like those guys never left. Marc Gasol's an unbelievable, underrated player. Don't get me wrong, he struggled last year. He was having a hard time last year, but even with him not really making shots, there's so much Marc Gasol does for you. Short of bringing the ball up the court, he can basically play point guard for you. He can get the ball at the top of the key, and he can dish it, he can drive it, he can hand it off, he can do all kinds of things. He's one of the best passing big men in the league, and of course one of the best defensive big men in the league. And I feel like people were kind of giving him too much slack last year. Like I said, even though he was struggling, it's like Marc Gasol, when he's on the floor, is always going to be the 5th option. He's never the offensive, there are guys sitting on the bench who are more of an offensive option than Marc Gasol is when he's on the floor. So I feel like people were getting mad at him last year because he was averaging 7 points instead of 10. You know what I mean? Yes, we needed him to hit more shots, but bottom line is he was still a valuable asset. He walked for nothing, and we're obviously having a hard time sort of filling that space. a lot of people really want to start Chris Boucher, which I understand because he's having a phenomenal year. Not only is he six-man material, some of his stats got on top. He keeps playing like this. He's going to be legitimate MVP material. I don't think any of us expect him to keep up this terror that he's been on, but he's been playing great. But I think Boucher has been so powerful for us off the bench that we need to just keep him in that position because he's succeeding and he's thriving there. I'm not saying you're going to abruptly interrupt his great start here by throwing him in the starting lineup, but I just don't see a reason to really change the position you have him in because we need that punch off the bench. Norman Powell is just starting to come back around and come back to form. We need to see if he can stay consistent and stay injury-free. So in the meantime, we might as well have Boucher as him and Norman Powell switching off as our six men. He's our energy off the bench. He's our scoring off the bench. It just doesn't really make sense to insert him into the starting lineup at this particular time. So we need to get one more tall power forward or someone that can at least play the power forward or center position, a big man. This isn't a popular opinion, but I'm not totally averse to guys like Andre Drummond. I know they're kind of seen as just empty stat guys, but the Raptors need rebounding and just a presence in the paint. They need some dogs down there. And Andre Drummond is not a phenomenal player, but he addresses a bunch of needs, or at least a couple of needs that the Raptors have right now, one of which is just rebounding and have a big guy down low on the glass who can wreak some havoc. And that's pretty much all Andre Drummond's good for. So I don't mind acquiring a player like that if that's basically the main option that's out there, because he definitely directly addresses things that we need. Last point would be, and this is sort of coming to fruition more lately, but last thing the Raptors need to do to sort of make sure that the season is successful is reclaim what I would call their defensive identity. And they've done it the last few games. We all noticed in those first few games of the year where they were losing games that they should have been winning, that the defense just wasn't on point the way it usually is. Their defense has always been tops in the leagues. They pride themselves on defense. One of the reasons we were still the second best team in the entire league the year after losing Kawhi Leonard is because our identity was defense. And I was like, we will probably miss Kawhi the most on defense. And you know what? We still had one of the best defensive teams in the league. And at the beginning of this year, we really were struggling out the gate. It's like nobody really knew where to go, or there was a lot of scrambling around. Just sort of even for the modern NBA, there was sort of an excess of open threes against us. There was just sort of this excess of swishes from the three-point line against us for those first few games. So it's really important, and I think they're doing it now, that the Raptors just buy into a defensive system like they had last year and the year before. Buy into it, stick with it, believe in it, stay disciplined. And I think that's what you've been seeing as of late. The Dallas Mavericks were a pretty depleted team last night, but what we did with Luka, shutting him down pretty much and shutting that team down overall, was really impressive. And I think it really, really speaks to how important defense is to not just any team's success, but our team's success in particular. If we're just, keeping it real and calling a spade, we've got great star players, we've got clutch players, but we don't have any superstars. So you have to buy into your defensive identity. You have to have a defensive identity. You have to live and die by it. That's how teams like us are going to get past those, above 500 teams and start beating some of those sub 500 teams that we need to be beating. So those would be the three things that I think we need to really address this year in order to have a successful year, and that's no matter how the year turns out, whether we flunk it, miss the playoffs, tank. I don't think we're going to tank, make a title run. These are the three things that I think basically need to happen. We need to address, trading Kyle Lowry basically. We need to address our front line, our big man situation, and we need to reclaim our defensive identity, which I think we're already well on our way to doing. So anyways, that was Gavin, NBA Real Talk. Please like and subscribe down below. Let me know what you think. Give me your comments. Gavin, signing out for NBA Real Talk. And I'll talk to you guys next time.